and it like, I thought it didn't work, but it like popped all right up just now.
Easy peasy.
Now we just gotta wait for me to close this. Done. All right.
But we're live anyways. We're live with our
Going. There we go. All right.
Talks and Freedom Speaks. I think we're on number 9 as you put it.
Yeah. So Gina.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that I love the fact that one of the things that is the coolest thing about this container is like, this is real life, right? We can sit up in a studio, and yes, we want to look nice. And yes, we want like to have nice things for people to look at and all of the things. And we also want people to know that EMPHORY is about like, how do I do life richer, funner, easier, and more authentic and vulnerable? And so I love that some days I'm like, guess what? My car's in the shop. And so I had to leave the office and come here, and I'm sitting on my bed, just chilling. And I love it. I love that, like, everything is allowed.
I totally agree. I feel like that, although I still sometimes stumble into perfection paralysis, it stops me a lot less from doing life. Like, there were years that I would just churn on doing things. And now it's like, okay. I was actually thinking about an email went out for one of the programs, my 20s program, and it had one line in it that was like wrong, saying there's only one more week left and there's 2 weeks left. And normally I would like send a correction and do all the things. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that life happens and it went out a week early and there's nothing that needs to be done here. Like, sometimes that means I show up like, yeah, like you're talking about. Sometimes that just allows me freedom to just freaking do things. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
Power of the
doing it is the fun, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when we don't do things, we don't learn the thing that we need to do to actually do it weller.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Which actually really plays into like our principle for today. So we drew principle 36. So principles, just as a reminder, are how it works, that the law works. And our practices are really how we apply it in our continual understanding and belief of the foundation of how it works. But it's how we use it. And the principles are that it happens. And today it's role and identity. So on our human side, it's really about our role that we play, where our spirit side is about identity. And yeah, like you were just saying, the fun is in the doing. Like, the fun is in some of the roles we show up as and the playing of it. But we sometimes get tripped up and make it significant, which is when we are, thinking that role or the doing is what really is what matters, when it's a part of the enjoyment of the experience. It's not the only piece that matters. So that's all existential and shit. So let's dive into what role and identity really means.
Really means. Well, and I like, the longer I play in this model, the deeper I fall in love with it and the funner it gets, because looking at the fact that like the separation is the design in order to integrate, right? But we've been playing in this for so long that we integrate a whole lot more than we separate, right? And now it's not better to be further along and integrate. It's not better. Is it funner from the perspective of like, I think sometimes it's almost like harder to comprehend, which makes it funner to play in. But if I hadn't separated it, the the oneness wouldn't be fun, right? Because that's the enmeshment. And so I love, one of the things that we talk about is that our human is insignificant, right? And like you said, like sometimes we make that role more significant, right? And I love that you said more significant, because our roles are significant, but not apart from our identity, which is what I think makes it cool to start to play with, right? Because it's not about disregarding either one, right? It's about, how do I put them in right order so that everything I do brings me joy?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is identity and role, Gina?
Well, I wanted to play with role. Like, I think about role as the many hats I wear at all different times, right? It's the Gina that's a coach. It's the Gina that's a daughter. It's the Gina that, is being coached. It's Gina that goes to work. It's all of the hats that I wear in different circumstances that my human is playing out. And identity is, again, on the spirit side, which makes it a lot less describable, a lot harder to connect with words. But the way I'm seeing it in this moment in time, it's like, it's my foundation of who I actually am at my core. It's the thing that's unchanging about me that I can't see, but I know is there. And I'm pointing right now to my belly, because that's where, in my mind, it sits inside of me after being in this container. And it's, simply, we often say, like, it's love, right? Like, our identity is love, but sometimes that feels really woo-woo and fluffy. So I don't know that I have all the words to describe identity, and I'd love you to add on to that.
Yeah, well, I love the things that you said about the fact that it's unchanging, right? Which is how we tell the difference between, okay, what's my identity and what role am I playing? Because if I think that anything of my identity can shift and change and morph and get better or worse or whatever, then I'm not really understanding what my identity is, because my identity is that sliver of the divine, that thing that is forever, eternal, same, never changing, foundational. And I love what did you say that made me go, yes? Oh, and we in the container say love, right? However, our caveat is, but that word is so bastardized, because, for example, I could set a boundary and I could say, you know what, like, that's not okay in my world. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this circumstance or this situation, because the way that this is playing out is not in alignment with who I am, right? And to somebody without boundaries, that's not going to feel like love. It's not going to seem like love. It's not actually going to be love to them, right? And so this is where I love that that's what it is. Yet, like you said, that's so fluffy and airy. And what does it really mean? Because that's the cool part about identity, is the undescribable, right? Like, I can't describe it, because you could be like setting a boundary and be doing it totally douchey. And you could be setting a boundary that really isn't a boundary. It's trying to control someone else, right? Or you could be setting a boundary and taking care of yourself. And all of the how it plays out, and if I do it douchey or not douchey, and like all of that plays into the role of it. And it has nothing to do with my identity, because regardless if I'm a douche or not, I'm still love. But I do douchey things sometimes, and other people do douchey things sometimes, right? But it might not my action isn't combined with my identity, so it doesn't convey as love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the really cool part of this that's starting to evolve for me is, yes, my identity is not changing. Like, it's unchanging. It's always the same. And it's actually the same, like, anyways. But my understanding of my identity is what's changing for me. And that's been really fun to grow in terms of like my identity as love, because I I will always be uncovering that in my human, like, and in the integration of me. There's always going to be more for me to know. And so, yes, when I was being douchey back there, but maybe didn't know I was being douchey and really was coming from what I knew as love in that moment, has evolved over time. And that's been really, really cool, because I can't not be my identity,
Yeah.
right? Like, it is, period.
Yeah.
My understanding, my awareness, my connection to it, how I allow that to be the driver of who I be and who I show up as, is becoming less in competition and more like we're riding the bike tandem. Like, we both have our job, and I don't let my identity. I know my identity more and more, so it more easily filters through me, as opposed to kind of the fighting. I really think about, when you were first talking and when I was thinking about roles, how compartmentalized my world was. My personal life, my work life, like, those are two different roles. Those parts of Gina don't intersect. And for a long time, like, that felt really healthy to me, right? And it was at the time. That's what I needed.
Yeah.
And now I look at how I interact in the world, and there are still times when I can feel that compartmentalization, but I can tell that's when I'm really in my human, thinking it's about my role instead of that infusion of my identity through my role, as opposed, yeah, like, now I don't have that separation and that compartmentalization in my regular occurrences, because who I am inside of me is who I show up as. Yes, I understand there are sometimes different rules in my human role, and how, like, maybe professionalism is at the office. So what I wear to the office and what I wear to yoga is like conditional and role based in my human. But how I feel inside of me doesn't change in the way it used to.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that that's like one of the reasons why we want to do what we do in this container, which is show up, right? Because I'm me, regardless of if I have makeup on or if I don't have makeup on. And it's easy to create a facade. Like, we've all been on social media. It's so easy to create a facade. And we really want that integration of who I am and the role that I'm playing out to be so like intertwined that I'm free to show up without fear of judgment, or show up and make a mistake, or show up and not have an answer, or however those things play out. But I really think, when I think about role and identity, the thing that pops up is imposter syndrome, right? And how, when we don't know our identity and we elevate in our role, but we still think that we're less than, that gap is imposter syndrome. So this is how to avoid it, or this is how to heal that, or this is how to mend the gap, but I do want to make sure that, like, we're really clear You cannot integrate until you have completely separated and you know the difference between the internal identity and the external role, right? So if you're new to this information and new to this model, like, don't try to integrate until you are crystal clear what your role is and what your identity is and how to tell the difference and what it looks like and what it feels like and all the things. So we don't want you guys jumping the gun and going, oh yeah, it's all about the integration. No, it's not, because the integration is impossible without the separation.
Yeah, for sure. It's like trying to braid a jumbled mess of hair. First, you have to comb your hair in order to get the strands separated so that you can braid it.
What
At least
a great analogy.
my hair is always very enmeshed. So to braid it, it would be a
Be a whole thing.
whole thing. And one of the questions that I get tripped up on this a little bit, Lori, is we've got this idea of, on the spirit side, not this idea, we've got this model and we've got identity on the spirit side. Is my identity and your identity, because identity is on the same side as same in the spirit, are our identities the same?
Yes. 1000%. What I came to express from that identity, different for every human. Every single person has a different expression of the identity, which we like to call it a rodentity, which is how your role and your identity come together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good one, and it's continually evolved. Like I remember showing up in this container a couple years ago, and like you've said it, like I'm not going to get it right, but you often talk about how we maybe help people remember their identity as love. Is that close enough? What you say?
Yeah.
It's been so interesting on the journey, because you're saying, you know, make sure you separate before you integrate. And just this like invitation for people that it's okay that that's going to continue to evolve forever, like completely. Even my idea of, and I spent a lot of time in that separation, in that compartmentalization, because I had so much enmeshed, right? Like first I was compartmentalizing, which really wasn't separation. It was still enmeshment because I didn't know where one ended and began, but it felt separate, which was safe for me at the time. Then I recognized, oh gosh, I'm really all enmeshed. I don't really understand how my human functions and how my spirit functions, which is causing a bunch of dis-ease, dissonance, chaos for me. And so that separation, I mean, I still have to go back and separate sometimes when I realize I'm enmeshed. But every time I do it, it's from a whole new perspective. And it's on a more, it's not even that my foundation has changed. This came out of coaching today. My foundation has always been solid at the base of me, but it's again that some of the stuff has been cleared, and I am knowing that that foundation is already solid. And so it's like I'm standing just a little bit taller. I don't know if you're a woman, maybe even as a dude, you put on a different pair of shoes and it's got a little bit more of a heel on it. Like everything out here looks different. Like I can see a little bit more of the top of the fridge or the microwave, or just, I see everything just a slight perspective different. And that's how this whole thing has worked for me anyhow. Every time I come back to that separation and integration, and I play between the two, it's not the same. It's always more available, which is really exciting. Like it's exciting that it's never done. Because you even talked about funner earlier, right? Like it's funner, maybe is the word over, you know, where I am right now. But like all along the way, it got funner. Like truthfully, right? Like it's just an even greater expression of funner, but you didn't even know that more funner was available until you had the funner before it, which sometimes didn't feel funner. because you're sometimes doing, you're going through some stuff as you're having the fun. But I don't know. I just really like the evolution is very fun.
Yeah. And I think that is really this thing that we talk a lot about, life and life more abundant, right? Because we're alive. And so people go, yeah, this is my life. But life, to be alive spiritually, wholly, right? Not just alive in your spirit or just alive in your human, right? Because, and we talk about this a lot in the transformation of consciousness, that we go from thinking our human is the thing, and then we swing the pendulum all the way over, and then we get spiritual, right? But what we really want, like the invitation in this container really is into the integration fully of my human and my spirit, where my spirit isn't better, my human isn't worse. I'm not aspiring to not have fun with my human or not experience human things, right? It's all about having these two come together. And so life and life more abundant is really like the life is when those two things come together in our cognitive, right? Because like you were saying, we're forever practicing the discovery of that foundation of us, right? And once we recognize the foundation, that is where life begins. And then it becomes more and more abundant because I'm building on that foundation, not, I got my money straight. Oh shit. But now I got to get my marriage right. Oh, well, I got my marriage right. Okay. Well, now I have to work on my health. Okay. Well, I got my health right. Now my money's falling apart or whatever. Right. And that's the compartmentalization that you were just talking about, at least how I watch it play out with this life, and the more and the funner, and right, is that when I recognize that the foundation is there, and then all of these things will fluctuate. Now I'm building from the foundation, so everything gains. Right.
Yeah.
So now, even if I'm working on my money, my marriage is improving. And even if I'm working on a relationship with my kids, my business is improving, because I'm working everything from that foundation of my identity as love. And now what I'm doing is coming from love. And so everything that I do will more and more come from love, instead of that compartmentalizing our situations separately.
Mm-hmm. That's like a drop the mic moment. That's all of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like this understanding of, because my tendency used to be to human the shit out of everything. And so I was really I was applying a lot of the laws of the spirit to the human, and yet I wasn't plugged into the power source, right? Like for me right now, in my understanding, I like to play with, it really is like my power source. It's the thing that keeps me full. And otherwise, I'm kind of just like a skin bag with nothing in it. And like when I was operating so much from my human, it was exhausting. Like all I could do was like compartmentalize, because if I had to deal with everything at one time, like overwhelm would come in and everything would feel like it was falling apart, and there would be no idea that more is good. No freaking, that was not even on the horizon. More was always bad, because there was more of me to find the wrongness in, and more of me to find things that need to be fixed in, versus that shift now of ease. Like you're saying, it's just like efficient and streamlined when I go to the power source. And
Yeah.
for a long time too, and I can see how that would come across as like, ooh, well, that's better. Just like you were talking about, like, ooh, the power source is better. But it, like, without my body, without the bag for it to hang out in, there's nothing to experience. And so just always coming back to the value that both our human has. Like, I love playing lately, and you said this in a coaching session recently, like, The human is designed for lack. You probably said it 500 times. I heard it a lot lately, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the human's design. And our spirit is abundant. It's full. Like, it always has. And when you pair that, because one of our practices, everything is opposite, right? Like, it needs the both to be full. Like, the spirit has to have something to fill for the experience of all of this. I'm being redundant now, but I'm geeking out on that right now, because I probably still have some of it in me. I really always thought the spirit was better. Human was naughty, spirit was better.
Yeah. And here's, I think you're like, I haven't met anyone on this planet yet, ever, never, ever in all of my like traipsing all over the world. Never have I ever heard of anybody who doesn't also believe that. So I think that's kind of one of the things that's kind of fun and unique about why. Well, I won't say I think that's the fun. That's the why I think this is so fun and unique, because there's nothing to fight. There's nothing to reject. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing broken. There's nothing, right? It's just, oh my gosh, that's why it's more abundant, because it's just more. It's just more, right? And the next thing's just more, because I'm not trying to get rid of something and have that, which then actually depletes over there, but it might add over there, which is why now I got to go deal with it over there and take from there and add to there. And I'm still just here instead of the building on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
sometimes I feel like we talk about like other things other than just our principle, but that was really fun conversation about how that principle plays out.
Yeah. So like, depending on where you are in your journey, like maybe your step is just to start playing with, oh my gosh, I'm 100% human and I'm 100% spirit. Like, wow. And maybe you don't even believe that yet. So maybe the journey is what if, or if I did believe that, what would that be like? But if you're kind of playing in that, start noticing where you're maybe playing in your role and in your human, and when you're tapped into your identity, and maybe you're having a hard time with one or the other, and just observe. Like, cool. Because a lot of this, I don't even like to say the word work anymore, but a lot of this evolution comes from really knowing where you're at. Lori will often talk about, right? Like, it's like a GPS system. If we plug in where we want to go, but we aren't clear on where we're starting from, we're not going to actually get directions to where we want to go, right? Like, you really have to have it set with that GPS pointer at my location, as opposed to some address, in another state. It's not going to work the same. You're not going to get the same directions if you're not clear on where you're starting from. And we don't start clear. Like, you're going to get more and more information and clarity, but it's just an invitation. Invitation.
Yeah.
So yeah. And coming up, I'm excited. We'll get another EMPHORY 101 class started in the next month or so, but do you have any things you want to share with people?
In the next month or so? That's very exciting to me, because I talked to 2 people today that were like, hey, like, how do I learn more about this? And I was like, oh, I think Gina was going to wait till January. So I'm super excited that you're like,
I'm going to do one in the last quarter. I'll do one in the last quarter.
Okay, yeah. Sweet. Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. So no, we don't. Well, I'm going to do a challenge, but I don't quite know what that is yet. But I think it's going to be like maybe the first week of December. I'm going to say the first week of December, because I think I'm going to put out a thing where people can get free readings, or I'm going to do some free readings. Hi, Erin. How are you, Erin? This is live. Yeah. So if you see this and it's still October of 2023, make a comment and say, I'd like a free reading. And
Yeah.
then we'll get you a link to hook that up for you. All right. Well, we should probably make that link, or I should probably
We'll do
make
that.
that link.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
We'll
And
do that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, eventually too, like if you're really geeking out on this and you want to be a special guest, we're going to start like inviting people sometime into coming to play with us and just asking questions and getting some in this like EMPHORY talks, freedom speaks energy, so that we can all play together. So
I love it.
yeah.
All right.
Peace out.
Peace out. Now I got to figure out on my phone how to make it stop. Oh, that's funny. I don't actually see it. So I'm just going to end it, and then it'll end every